Hey y'all, this is Lauren Akins, and welcome to Season 3 of the Live and Love podcast. I'm so happy y'all are here and so glad that you are enjoying it as much as we are. So this season of the podcast, we are sharing conversations all about parenting. And as you know, most of you, I am a mom of 4 girls, and parenting is the big focus in my world currently. So I'm taking time to sit down with fellow parents, parenting experts, and my village of family and friends that help me raise my girls to talk about what it looks like to live in love while parenting.
And I'm Annie F. Downs. I'm so excited to be here for a 3rd season of the Live and Love podcast. Make sure you subscribed. And today's episode is really important. This is a great one to share with your people. So you can just hit share on your phone and you can text it to somebody or share it on your social media. And you can also go back, listen to season 1 and season 2 whenever you want to. They're all there for you as well. And don't forget, Lauren's New York Times bestselling book, Live and Love, is such a great read. If you haven't read that yet, go ahead and grab a copy.
Okay, so on today's episode of the Live and Love podcast, I get to sit down with counselors Sissy Goff and David Thomas to talk about what it looks like to live in love while raising boys and raising girls. Hey y'all, before we get into today's episode, which I am so excited to dive into, I want to take a moment to recognize the work of our sponsor, THISTLE Farms, and what they are doing for so many women. For one, their candles smell incredible, and not only do they look beautiful on your mantle or coffee table, but they also symbolize lighting the way for the next woman survivor of trafficking and exploitation. One of their survivors shared her testimony of how she was trafficked for 3 years. When she first learned about the symbolism of the candle, she said, "That candle was lit well before my trauma. Before I knew I would need to heal from something, someone knew that a place needed to be created for me." Y'all, I burn candles every single day. Literally every day. Candles create ambiance, they create space for creativity, they create sanctuary in the midst of madness. And you can imagine the madness at my household with all 4 of my girls and our dogs on a typical day. But we have a choice when we bring home a candle. We can bring home things that matter to us, like a beautiful smell, a pretty vessel, something that matches our living room, or you can bring home a candle that literally brings home another woman. It can create sanctuary, healing, and employment. It creates a clear path to get her back on her feet and get her life back. It is a simple but powerful decision when we can create spaces outside of our own lives and our own homes to make sure that there is a place ready for the next woman survivor. THISTLE Farms was also gracious enough to provide a 15% discount to our listeners when you use the code LIVEINLOVE, that's one word, at thistlefarms.org. That's thistlefarms.org, and use the promo code LIVEINLOVE to receive 15% off anything in their online store. If you're local to Nashville, they also have a beautiful cafe that you should totally stop in and visit and tell them Lauren sent you.
Okay, Lauren, so we're starting season 2. You and I have already chatted. Happy Mother's Day again to you. And now we're bringing in some experts.
Woohoo!
Right. So one of the things you said from the beginning when we were doing this parenting season is you really wanted to hear the difference of what's it like raising girls and what's it like raising boys.
Yeah, because my world is all girls.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in my life are also raising boys, and there is a difference. It is a very, and there are a lot of similarities, but the only world I know are girls. Although I do have 2 nephews now, so I am very interested to hear what you both have to say. And also, I feel like I should say, I cannot believe this is the first time that I'm officially meeting you. I know we have met over a candy bowl at Halloween, trick-or-treating, but we have so many overlapping friends and people in our life, and I have so been looking forward to getting to be with y'all, so thank you for being here.
We have too. Just delighted.
This does feel long awaited. I have heard the most wonderful things about you for so long. It's fun to finally get to be in the same room.
So much fun. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so David and Sissy, we all kind of introduce yourselves. We would love for our friends listening to know who y'all are and the work you do.
Well, we are both counselors at a place called Daystar Counseling Ministries, where I've been counseling kids there for 30 years, and you have 27?
26. We started when we were 6 and 7. That's important to know.
We used to call ourselves the Donnie and Maria of parenting until parents got so young that they don't know who Donnie
is. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So out of that work, we've gotten to write and speak and podcast and things like that.
Yeah. What's your most recent book that's come out, Sissy?
I have one coming out in August. for parents about their own anxiety.
Oh,
Called The
wow.
Worry-Free Parent.
Yeah.
And David has a great one that came out
Yeah.
9 months ago, probably.
Yes, called Raising Emotionally Strong Boys.
So together, y'all have the Raising Boys and Girls podcast
Yes.
as well. And it's just amazing the work that y'all do. And we are so thankful.
On the most
I
incredible
was about to
network
say.
of all
Well,
time.
You
That's
join
right.
this
You get to
incredible
be
network
in
that
the
we're
TSF
bananas
family
about.
with Lauren.
That's right.
That's exactly right. Lauren, when you think about bringing in professional counselors, is that a need for parents?
All day long. I am like one of the biggest advocates, I feel like, for counseling.
Yeah.
I mean, I will sing counseling's praises until the day that I die. And my husband, too. We started doing counseling. We did premarital, and we loved it so much that we just have sprinkled it throughout our marriage. And now that our girls are getting a little bit older and being able to like ask hard questions and feel real life things, and it's something that we are now starting to explore with our kids. And I mean, it is such a lifeline for our family, and I just can't say enough good things about counseling. And so I think this episode will be so helpful and enlightening for a lot of parents, especially parents who maybe don't know how they feel about counselors.
Yeah.
So I think this will be really, really good.
When it comes to raising boys and girls, I mean, Lauren made a great point, which y'all know is true of my life too, of like, I'm not raising anybody, but I'm raising everybody because we're part of villages, right? Like,
Right.
and we have a whole episode coming about what is it like when there's all these other people partnering with you to raise your kids. So will y'all help us a little bit? What is the difference in raising boys and girls today?
There are huge differences, I would say, and have always been. And I think, we talk about how at some of the earliest pediatric well visits, like 16 to 18 months, pediatricians would say that girls are saying about 100 words, boys are saying 30.
Oh, wow.
So there's a difference right there. Like right out of the gate, generally
Wow.
speaking, she has more words.
And she may her whole life.
Yes, absolutely. And so her capacity to regulate herself is different. Girls just from the get-go are going to be ahead in about every thread of their development with the exception of gross motor. So she just often is going to have some advanced skills that I think require us to always be adjusting the bar with the boys we love, or else we could set expectations that they're just not capable of meeting in the exact same way or at the exact same time. And so my firstborn is a girl, and I laughed all throughout early development with my wife to just say, we're going to always be adjusting the bars. Like we were given one of those kits that, you lock down the cabinets and plug up the outlets on the front side. And we moved and lost it and never remembered to use it with her. And we never really needed it. Right. And then my twin boys came on the scene and we couldn't lock down enough. Like it just, we can't safeguard this place
one girl
enough.
and 2 boys.
Yes, because Sissy and I talk about boys are wired for activity and movement. And so just the way they interact with the world, I would say from the earliest points in development is really different. I don't know what you would add to that.
Yes. I mean, boys being wired for activity and movement and girls being wired to connect. I mean, for a relationship, I think girls across development define themselves against this backdrop of relationship. And it's interesting, when we speak sometimes on raising boys and girls, and we'll go back and forth between who they are and what they need at different stages. And at the beginning, I read this little intake form that this girl filled out when she came to Daystar for the first time. And kids are supposed to write 5 adjectives to describe their mom, 5 to describe their dad, and then 5 to describe their parents' relationship. And I think her first one about her mom was okay cooker. But then she goes on and says, she takes me to places with her. She teaches me different things. Her dad, she said, he helps me with my dog. Every single adjective she used to describe her mom and dad was about relationship to her. It was about their interaction. There was nothing about what either of her parents did for a living, nothing that didn't have to do with her. And girls are often defining themselves by who they see themselves in others' eyes. And at the earliest stages, certainly their moms and dads.
Wow. And so what's the boy going to do in that moment? Is he writing about...
You know what is so funny to hear you ask that, Annie? Just yesterday, I walked down in the waiting room, and there was an 8-year-old boy filling out that exact form, and I heard him say to his mom, do I have to write down 5 words? Can I just give you 2? And that's such a picture of it. Like, she needed more room to describe all the things she
Right.
was observing. He's like, can I just give you 2 words? That's as many as I've got.
Yes.
So yeah, all those differences from the front side on.
Yeah. And will you talk a little bit, because I think we also see, I mean, this is true of your 4 girls, Lauren, that even within the same gender, they can be very different humans. And some of them may have less words. And I, as an Annie, am much better at communicating if I'm on a walk than if I'm sitting. And that's more of a masculine thing than a feminine thing. And so how do we, even as we're watching our kids, like Lauren, all 4 of your girls are so different.
So different. I mean, I say Ada James is like the boy I never had.
Oh, wow.
Because she, from day one, I mean, I have to still, she's 5 years old and I have to tell her, honey, you can't body slam your friends, babe. Girls don't want to play that way most of the time. Like, they want to play with dolls and pretend things, and she'll do those things. But girlfriend has got a speed that I'm like, we need some boys to come over here and play with her because she can't. But my other 3 are very much, mostly have that quote unquote girl speed.
Yes.
And but they all have very different personalities and very different speeds, but they all do have lots of words.
Yeah. So what happens when you run into a boy who has a lot of words? Your son has a ton of words and he does not like baseball. Or your daughter doesn't have a lot of words and loves to body slam people. How do we parent the kids who don't fit right in the middle of what is traditional?
We talk a lot about becoming students of the kids we love and studying development, like what's going on in these different moments. As Sissy was talking about, we love talking about unique things that are happening in different pockets of development and how it's our job to just lean into understanding those things, but also, to your question, studying temperament and knowing that all of these kids are hardwired uniquely. And we're going to see evidence of, I loved your story, girls who have more energy and boys who have more words. And so I think if we're on that long journey of becoming students of the kids we love, we're always thinking uniquely about what we're learning about them individually and where they will fit and more. We talk a lot about birth order too. And there are a lot of firstborn kids who have a lot of firstborn tendencies. And yesterday, I was with a firstborn who was more like a middle child. So it isn't that every kid's going to fit squarely within those spaces.
Right.
But if we're becoming a student, I think we're really learning who they are, where they fit, where they don't.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Becoming a student of every kid.
That is beautiful, David. Way to go.
Way to go.
I think I would add, I do think some of that, like David's saying, is going to be really normal. And with girls, 2 things I would pay attention to is that I do believe most girls want to please their nature because as relational as they are. And so especially when I see parents of younger girls and they talk about anger that overrides the need to please or anything else that's bigger than that, I always want parents to be a student and pay attention to, is there more to the story? Because that's so hardwired into them, I tend to think there might be more going on with a girl.
Oh, wow.
And at the same time, some girls who parents will say, she acts more like what David describes, because girls are so in tune relationally, and this is not at all to say this is what's going on with your daughter, so don't think I'm forecasting anything for her. But I think girls are pretty attuned to social cues most of the time. And what's confusing is, I think even for women, for us sitting here, there's this language that happens here, and then there's all this language going on under here.
Sure.
And so there are some girls who, as they grow older, that language down below gets harder and harder to read. And so they start to miss social cues, and they stand too close, and they talk too loud, and they don't know that wasn't funny to everyone in the room. And I start to feel a little concerned because then those girls start to get ostracized from the girls,
Right.
because they're missing social cues, hanging out with the boys, because boys are so much easier to navigate socially, that there could even be some attention hurdles or something like that in place. And so I think some variation in that is really normal. If the variation feels extreme, then I always want to see if there could be more to the story and pay a little bit more attention to what could be going on.
In the Akins family, there's 3 natural born, 2 Lauren out of her body babies, and there's 1 adopted. And so Lauren, will you even talk about that parenting difference? Is that an everyday parenting difference, or is that like when Willa Gray brings it up, parenting difference?
It's truly when Willa Gray brings it up. I think there are times where I have to almost remind myself that she's adopted, because there are moments where I forget that part. I mean, you know, you don't wake up every day and think, how did my child come to be in this family?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's just, it is who we are. And so I definitely don't have in my daily life that distinguishing, this one is adopted, this one is biological. But if I'm being honest, as a mother to both, there are times where I go, oh, Willa Gray's struggling with this. Is it because she's adopted? Or like, Ada James is struggling with this. Is it because, you know, she's part of me and this is what I struggle with? Oh my, you know, like, I feel like that guilt of mom comes in of like, did I not do enough here? Am I doing too much there? Wow. Where do I pull back? Where do I move closer? But I have to remind myself sometimes of her being adopted. Because you get to where your child is your child, and your brain doesn't go to see that difference, or you know, and you don't feel that difference. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe you don't know what I mean, but I feel like adopted parents totally get what I'm saying. Where you go, oh yeah, she does look different, and you don't put that together as somebody's meeting your family for the first time. I'll forget and just introduce my kids, and they'll want to know more about Willa Gray. And I'm like, oh, yes, we adopted her from Uganda. She is African. So I think that's so beautiful too. It's such a natural part of our family and our community. You know, she just pops in everywhere she goes. She's so well known. So it's not something that's talked about a whole lot. Yeah. But when we do talk about it, it's a fun conversation for the most part. But as she's gotten older, there have been a lot of hard conversations as her brain is able to understand and ask more questions, that she's like putting two and two together. Like, oh, so I did have another mommy at one point. Oh, I did have a different daddy at one point. Let's talk about that. And so those questions do pop up, and those things do happen. But
is it different with boys and girls when you talk about adoption with them? If little boys are adopted and little girls are adopted, is there a difference in response?
I would say one difference I do see often connected to that very first part of our conversation about fewer words is that I do hear more parents of boys say he asks fewer questions. Like I think about a family I'm working with right now who have a son and daughter who are adopted, and the mom has asked, should I be worried that he doesn't ask more about it? And I, you know, have been able to speak into that to say, in general, boys often are asking less about a lot of things in life where she is going to have more words and need to. And certainly as we're discussing, we could see evidence of strong differences. But I think sometimes boys have to be invited into the deeper and harder conversations that they might not initiate on their own. And how often I have even heard parents say they're in the middle of a deeper or harder conversation, and boys will put their hands over their ears and say, can we be done talking now? You know, and just this sense of it's more work to kind of work through all the different emotions and thoughts that accompany those deeper and harder conversations, where I don't know that you would hear as many girls say, can we stop talking as often?
Not as often.
Yeah.
Some, maybe.
Well, y'all talk about that a little bit, though, because one of the things I have learned from y'all is when the kids are done talking, we need to let that be.
Yes.
Like when they get up to go play, or when they say, can we be done, or make a joke in the middle of a serious thing, like as parents and as people helping in village life, we need to trust their capacity. Will you talk a little bit about boys and girls' capacity for hard conversation?
We talk a lot about thinking about those conversations the way kids navigate swimming in a pool. That, you know, for us as adults, we can stay underwater for longer. We can hold our breath for longer, and kids can't. They have to come up for air more frequently, and we want to honor that. We sometimes want to or need to stay in the conversations longer, and they simply cannot. And if we're thinking about it around that analogy, it'd be kind of like holding a kid underwater longer than they were feeling safe to do so. So if we think about conversations in doses and letting them pop up, and know that the coming up for air may involve, Annie, to your great question, a lot of play. It's this sense of we need to come out of the heaviness of that and into something fun and enjoyable and that feels like play that allows me to catch my air, catch my breath differently.
And it's probably good for us. I mean, I think we stay in the intensity sometimes to our detriment as adults. And so probably following their lead is so good for us too.
Taking a moment to show some love to our sponsors, because this show wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for their support. Support from partners like Crew and how they are making the Bible accessible to as many families as they can. It is still so crazy to me that something I could not live without is something that most people still don't have access to, a Bible, or even allowed to have one. That's a reality that many people around the world are facing today. Crew's missionaries are in almost every country on earth, and they are seeing more and more people come to know Jesus. But there is one thing they are missing, a Bible in their own language. We continue to have so many of our Live and Love listeners support Crew, and that just fills my heart to know that we are still filling that need. But as one missionary said, we found so many people reading their Bibles. Please continue praying for us. We still need more Bibles to distribute. So can I ask y'all to please join me in helping meet that need? For only $21 a month, you can provide 3 people with Bibles each and every month. When you sign up to provide 3 Bibles with a monthly gift of $21, as a thank you, Crew will provide meals to 15 hungry individuals through their humanitarian aid ministry. Plus, you'll receive a free copy of my book, Live in Love. Simply text Akins to 71326 to help today. Imagine just how much this gift could change someone's life. So text Akins to 71326. That's AKINS to 71326 to help now, or visit give.crew.org/Akins. Message and data rates may apply, available to U.S. addresses only. Don't go anywhere yet, because I have something so yummy to share. Craving fresh, delicious, easy meals? Let's talk WILDGRAIN. They're the first ever baked from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, fresh pastas, pastries, and delivered right to your door. Unlike typical supermarket bread, WILDGRAIN uses a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly, lower in sugar, and rich in nutrients and antioxidants. Every item bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. You'll never run the risk of getting bored with WILDGRAIN. They're constantly adding new, seasonal, and limited time special items to try. Plus, for every new member, WILDGRAIN donates 6 meals to the Greater Boston Food Bank, so you can eat good and do good all at the same time. All you have to do is sign up at wildgrain.com/liveandlove and choose which type of box you want to receive and how often. It's so easy to reschedule, skip, or cancel. Plus, for a limited time, you can get $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/liveandlove to start your subscription. You heard me right, free croissants in every box, and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/liveandlove. That's wildgrain.com/liveandlove, or you can use promo code liveandlove at checkout.
Have you experienced that, Lauren, of the kids exiting the conversation before you're ready to exit the conversation?
Yeah, well, even with the Covenant shooting, we'll get into a very serious conversation about it where my girls are asking questions. And as an adult, the reality is once I go back to that place of being in that day and around that time and what we were feeling and processing, the mood does shift a little bit. And once they've kind of talked through the things that they're talking through at that time, one of them made a joke in the middle of it and then popped up to go play. And I was like, what? and like an adult, if an adult conversation, you would almost be like, that's so insensitive.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't believe that is where my girls were going with that. I think truly they were feeling what they were feeling at the time. They were saying what they were feeling and processing, and then they were past it. They were ready to go on to play with the Barbie or whatever it was. But in my mind, like as a parent, I wanted to be like, no. Hey, that's not kind. Mommy was feeling this. Your sister was still asking. Like, don't make a joke. And it was just a random joke about something that they thought was funny later, and just were ready to have a different conversation. But in my what I wanted to do was say, no, we need to sit and this is how the room is feeling right now. But as kids, they don't process that way.
Yes. And so much of that is we assume that they're verbal processors. And, with younger kids, the type of therapy we recommend the most is play therapy, because play is the language of kids and because they're processing through play when we're not even aware of it. Sometimes yesterday was at Disney with my 4-year-old nephew, and we were standing. I mean, he has randomly asked more about death since the Covenant shooting than he ever has. And we were standing. He calls me Diddy. He said, Diddy, come look at these ducks with me. And we walked over, and this female and male duck were laying there. And he said, is that a mama and dada? And I said, yes, it is, Henry. And he said, are they going to die? And I said, they're doing great right now. Or I don't even know what I said to him.
Yeah.
And then he said, one more thing. And then he skipped off. It's just the same idea. He's working something out in his little brain right now. And I need to let that happen in the way it's going to unfold and be with him in the moments where I can. But it's hard to remember that, I said, are you worrying about death? That was my question. Are you worrying and thinking about that more than you used to? And he said, yes. And then he skipped off.
Huh.
I want to follow him and say, wait, Henry,
hang on.
let's talk about it.
For sure.
That's not what he needs.
Yeah. That's
David,
so
when
true.
are the times that we need to ask the kids to stay engaged? So if we're telling our kids that my husband and I are getting divorced and one of them jumps up and runs out of the room, is it, no, we need to finish this. So I need you to come back? Are there times where we honor their need to exit and times where we need them to stay?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say there certainly will be times when we need to, for the sake of a lot of things, move a little farther into the conversation. I would argue that I think we could still fold in the wisdom of the conversation in doses of acknowledging, okay, they're cueing me to, there's an internal struggle of some kind going on. So what might it look like for us to turn the conversation in a different way? So maybe rather than just sitting and talking, let's take the dog on a walk. I look across the room, you know what? We haven't taken him out for a while. Let's take him out for a few minutes, or maybe just throwing a tennis ball with a dog. And I talk a lot about how for boys, conversations shoulder to shoulder feel much safer than eye to eye. So we're honoring the fact that we do need to talk more, but we might do that in a different way. And then I think even thinking about what Sissy said, folding in play and watching for where we've talked with so many parents since the tragedy about how kids are always working to try and organize that information that we as adults can't make sense of and make meaning, and how many boys, parents I've heard report that they observe them playing some form of good guy, bad guy, and how often I've heard parents of little boys
I saw
say,
that too already with a family. I was like, we're playing with Nerf guns the week after.
Yeah.
Right.
But they needed to. And y'all had actually told the family, it is okay.
Yes.
It is absolutely okay. But I was surprised.
Well, and so many parents of boys have reported that the way they're orchestrating that play is, saying to a friend or a sibling, like, I'm going to be the bad guy, you be the good guy, don't let me win.
Yes.
So it's this sense of, I need to tell the narrative and I need it to have the ending that the police came in and everyone else was safe, and that's how they're working to make meaning out of that experience. And I think to those parents, I've said, that's a beautiful way to quote unquote talk through what's happened. Like he's organizing the information through play and coaching his friend. Here's how the story needs to go so that I can make sense of, out of all this hard, there were some good things that happened too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do girls do that? I mean, I remember doing that with Barbies, where I was writing a story. Is that, that's, your girls are Barbie girls.
Barbie girls. And they do the things where somebody's dying and I'll walk in and over here and I'm like, did you just say that she just died? And she's like, yeah, well, she just died. She got asked all the time, when my kids have asked questions, are you going to die, Mommy? I'm like, well, yeah, we're all going to die, but we are all going to be together again. It's going to be awesome, but it's not your time to go today. Right. So let's just, and that's kind of the language that I've been using. So when they play and they're like, oh yeah, she died, Jesus said it was time for her to come home. I'm like, okay, well, it feels like, but it has very much been way more of a conversation and in their play. And do you, at what point do you say, okay, your 3-year-old sister doesn't need to hear as much of the death conversation as, because she's like just joking about it all over the place. Where my older two are really in that and processing a lot of it. I feel like I'm struggling with the stages of life in my 4 girls of like the older two know a lot more. The 3-year-old kind of knows that, of what was happening, but not really. And so not wanting to shield completely the 3-year-old, but also like age appropriate, or let's not talk about that around your 3-year-old sister, or I don't know. And maybe you do let them talk about some things. I don't know how to gauge the level of knowledge or to say and what not to say.
Well, I mean, you're not going to be able to prevent all the conversations, certainly. And I think it would be easy to even use David's great example about lungs. Like, your lungs are stronger. You can stay underwater longer than your little sister. And there are some things just like that we talk about because you're older and your brain is more developed, that we get to talk about that she's not ready for yet.
Yeah.
And so that's a fun game to play with your big sisters, or that's a fun game to play with me. But let's play. What do you think are some good ideas to play with her?
Yeah.
And around her?
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, one of the things y'all talk a lot about, David and Sissy, is the parent being the safe voice. Yes. The parent is the one that you can bring any question to ask anything. So even when Lauren's saying that, how are you the safe voice even in your own home? Even when siblings come home and say stuff from school. I mean, curse words are heard between siblings probably before they're heard at school.
Right.
So how do you even in your own home set the parents up, Lauren and TR, as this is who you go to ask questions, not your older siblings?
Yeah. I feel like you are already doing that. I love when you were talking about how safe your daughter would feel asking questions about adoption, and that you all have so clearly laid this beautiful foundation of you can ask anything you need to ask about that story. And that feels so important. We're talking so often with parents about just becoming the source, and that knowing that if we offer that up and establish ourselves in that way, that may mean that kids are going to come to us at times with questions that we think, I was so not prepared for that. We're not ready for that yet. But wanting always for them to feel the invitation of there is no topic off limits. And I want to always be your source. Anything you hear at school, come to me first. And I think building on what Sissy said, let's you and I do that together, and then we can decide if your younger sister's ready for that conversation. And I think often I've found a lot of older siblings love the ownership of that. Like, I might get to talk about things my younger siblings don't get to with my mom
30
and
more
dad.
minutes staying away.
There
That's
it
right.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. So appealing
So
to that, I think, is a win.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you talking about you're not ready for the question. I feel like 9 times out of 10, I'm not ready for the question. I mean, because the kids just come out of left field with everything, and you're like, whoa, where did you hear that? Like, okay, buckle up, mommy. We're gonna have this conversation. But it's so true, and I think it's so important to acknowledge the hard part in that for the parents. And I feel like me and you talk about this a lot, but a lot of times when it feels like, oh, this feels like it's going to, like, it feels intimidating, it feels really hard, I don't know that I can get through this, but being brave enough to like trust your instinct as a parent and to trust that the love that you have for your kids is strong enough to get you through. The Holy Spirit's just going to speak through you what needs to be said at the right moment, and to not talk too much, but to always be honest, and that it does feel scary to walk into those conversations as a parent. But it has to come from you. If you're going to be that safe place, you have to be honest, because I feel like kids so quickly will pick up when you're not telling them the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so scary though sometimes to tell the whole truth, because you don't. What if it goes badly, or what if they don't need to know, or what if it causes more tears? Like, how do we balance that of telling the whole truth? How much whole truth do we tell?
I think one rule of thumb we can operate under consistently is knowing that if kids are asking questions, they are somehow ready for some information. We talk a lot about how kids have this internal barometer that allows them to ask the questions they're ready to have answered in the time they're asking.
Wow.
Now, they may not be ready for a full answer. If we're going to talk about a marathon being 26 miles, they may not be ready for the full 26 miles, but we may be ready to talk about 10 miles of that conversation at this point. And then we also challenge parents to always be thinking about in harder, deeper conversations, is what I'm sharing something they're needing, or is it something I'm needing to talk through? And if it's something I'm needing to talk through, then that's a conversation I need to have with another trusted adult, as opposed to working through that information with them or on them, instead of just giving them the age-appropriate information. And a good rule of thumb that we talk a lot about too is, if you ever feel really stuck, whether they ask a question you're not ready to answer, or you think, I don't know how far to go in this conversation, I think it's always fine to say to kids, that is an amazing question. I'm so glad you asked that. I want to think about that and then get back to you. Or I want to look up the answer to that. If you're thinking, I know the answer, but I'm not sure how to give the answer to a person your age. And then that gives you a little time to hit pause, talk with your spouse, talk with a friend, do some research, and then come back to them. But really leading with them knowing 100% that was a safe question to ask and a good question to ask.
That's really good.
I was just thinking, too, as you were saying that. I mean, I'm curious even what y'all would say. When you think about asking your parents questions growing up, do you remember one answer? One specific thing they said about sex or about a loss you encountered in your family or anything concrete?
I probably have two memories, but not daily. I have a couple. Yeah.
Okay.
A very specific answer.
Like how they, when you said, what is sex? Or what, however you asked that, what does that mean? Where do babies come from? Do you remember how they answered, the wording they used?
Well, I can't remember wording. I do feel like my aunties met both my parents. My parents are so honest about everything.
Yeah.
To the point where some friends would come to the house and they would learn all kinds of things just being at my house, because my parents are like, we're going to tell you how it is. If you ask a question, I'm going to answer it. I am always the person you can come to. Even the questions that I think about now, like as my kids get older and start asking me questions, I'm so grateful for the way that my parents answered questions, and they just shot me straight, and they were honest about their mistakes. They were honest about the things they did well. And in all of that, and I think that has trickled down for sure the way that I parent and the way that Thomas Rhett parents. And that is one thing that I am really proud of, is the way that I think we are that safe place for our kids. And
Sounds like
and there are we have so many conversations. But then that's even fun, like for our kids to go to grandparents' houses, because I know that his parents and my parents are also having intentional and real conversations with them. And it's all out of love, and some of it is hard. And then there are times where, our parents will come to us and they're like, hey, Lennon said something the other day and I wasn't really sure how you wanted to handle it, so I told her to come ask you.
That's great.
But yeah, I will say, thinking back, it was always honesty. I can't think necessarily of exact wording, but the way that my dad and mom speak to me today is the way that they spoke to me when I was young. Like, I don't remember a difference in parents, if that makes sense. Like, I don't have a different version of them.
Yes. Which I love that you said, I don't remember specifically what they said, but it was always honest.
Yeah.
Because, we talk so much about how, we were talking earlier about the anxiety epidemic with kids. We also feel like parents are more anxious than they've ever been because you know too much.
Yeah.
Honestly, things that parents before never knew. And so it's easy to start to get so panicky about having exactly the right answer when they're not going to remember your answer anyway. They're going to remember the fact that you were with them, that you were safe, that you were always honest, that you were kind, that you heard them. Those are the things that are more important really than your words. And so to go back to that and take deep breaths in those conversations is probably the most important.
Yeah. Taking another quick break to show some love to a new sponsor for the podcast, BLUELAND. Did you know we're eating and drinking roughly a credit card's worth of plastic a week? Yep, that's right. The products that we're using every day are ultimately contaminating our water supply, generating hundreds of microplastics that we end up ingesting. So BLUELAND set out to do something about it. Eliminate the need for single-use plastic in the products we reach for the most. BLUELAND is on a mission to eliminate single-use plastic by reinventing cleaning essentials to be better for you and the planet. Their idea is simple. They offer endlessly refillable cleaning products with a beautiful cohesive design that looks great on your counter. Just fill your bottles with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. You will never have to grab bulky cleaning supplies on your grocery run. Refills start at just $2.25. You can even set up a subscription or buy in bulk for additional savings. From cleaning sprays to hand soap, toilet bowl cleaner, and laundry tablets, all BLUELAND products are made with clean ingredients you can feel good about. Make sure you try their Clean Essentials Kit, which has everything you need to get started. 3 bottles of cleaner plus a bottle of hand soap. And comes in beautiful light scents such as iris agave, fresh lemon, and eucalyptus mint. I love that I can just keep reusing the bottles without it going to waste, and it's so easy just to refill with water and pop in another tablet. And you know I need fast and easy when it comes to keeping a house clean with 6 people and our 2 dogs. Right now, BLUELAND has an offer just for our listeners. You can get 15% off your first purchase of any product. To get 15% off your first order, go to blueland.com/liveinlove. You won't want to miss this. blueland.com/liveinlove. That's blueland.com/liveinlove. Okay, don't go anywhere just yet because I have to tell you that I love being a girl mom to my 4 amazing daughters, but I am also a proud dog mom to 2 amazing puppies. They're not puppies anymore, but I still call them puppies, Kona and Cash, and that's why I am so excited to share our new partner with you, Sundays for Dogs. Sundays is air-dried dog food made from a short list of human-grade ingredients and was co-founded by Dr. Tori, a practicing veterinarian. Sundays contains 90% meat and 10% vegetables and 0% synthetic nutrients. Besides USDA beef and all-natural chicken, you'll find digestive aids like pumpkin and ginger plus disease-fighting antioxidants. Your dog is going to love Sundays, and you'll feel so good knowing that you're feeding your dog the best quality food. Unlike other fresh dog food, Sundays is 0 prep, 0 mess, and 0 stress. It's shelf-stable, so it lasts, and every order ships straight to your door, so you'll never have to worry about running out of dog food again. And bonus, Sundays for Dogs cost 40% less than any other healthy dog food brands because they don't waste money shipping frozen packages. Instead, they spend on what matters, sourcing the best all-natural ingredients for your pup. We worked out a special deal for our dog-loving listeners. Get 35% off your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfordogs.com/liveinlove or use code liveinlove at checkout. That's sundaysfordogs.com/liveinlove. Upgrade your pup to Sundays and feel good about the food you feed your dog.
What happens when a conversation goes bad? What happens when you thought you were telling them something exciting and we're moving to Florida and they're devastated and you thought this was going to be great? Or you were telling them something hard and sad, a grandparent is sick and they are not, and they're more devastated than you knew what to do with. Like, what happens when we mess up? Because we're going to mess up in this a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my mom's pet peeves was always, I don't know if y'all feel this way, but when you go to a restaurant and the server comes over and says, "Was that just the most amazing thing you've ever eaten?" She would say, "Quit trying to put words in my mouth." And I do think probably every example you just gave, we thought they were going to be sad. We thought they were going to be excited. And so probably as neutrally as we can go in initially in a conversation and give them room to feel whatever they're feeling.
Yeah.
And then maybe we help steer them, but that we're just aware of what we're entering the room with is I think, something to consider.
I was thinking the same thing. Like if we let the first rule of thumb be, you can ask anything you need to ask, we can talk about anything you need to talk about, maybe the great second rule of thumb would be, and you can feel whatever you need to feel. And to know that, kind of back to our conversation about temperament, different kids might show a great amount of excitement and some kids might be really sad as their starting point or just need time to let that digest. And so they look neutral and then later point. But if we're giving everybody permission to feel, you get to start where you are and end where you need to be too.
One thing that just popped into my mind that I feel like this generation of parents are battling with is technology and having phones in your hands. And like when I was growing up, that wasn't a thing. And I know that we don't have grown children of that generation yet, but they are growing in that generation. And something that I've become really aware of is, everybody is like, well, it's just to sit there and scroll on social media is so unhealthy. And I think for sure part of that is true. But even if you aren't on socials, which I haven't been for a minute, I still find ways to use my phone, even if it's just to take a video of what my girls are doing because I think they're so cute. But just constantly having that phone in between me and my kids, that has to affect them in some way differently. Like they are going to be raised in a different environment than we were raised with parents who didn't have that in between parent and children, right?
Yes. I remember sitting with my sister and brother-in-law and nephew not long ago. We were watching a show, one of his shows, so it was not a show any of the three of us would have chosen. It was, I'm sure, Blippi or something. But I noticed that all three of us were on our phones. And I thought, that makes me so sad that Henry would think, I can't wait till I can grow up and watch a show and be on my phone the whole time. And it's so easy to move towards that. And you're right. They look at our face and they see the back of our phone.
Right.
And how important it is for us to put those down and engage and be present.
Yeah.
Are boys and girls responding differently to technology right now?
I would say I think both could be drawn into it easily and maybe for some different reasons. I think, I have a lot more conversations in my office likely about video gaming, and you have a lot more conversation in your office about social media. Not to say that there aren't girls into gaming and boys into social media, but, images on a screen that move will always capture a boy's attention different than words on a page. We're visually wired creatures, so it makes a lot of sense to me why boys are so drawn to that medium in particular, and where kind of even back to what we talked about on the front side, where it's more of a challenge to regulate. It's just easy for him to get lost in it for long periods of time. And so I have conversations constantly with parents around that animal in particular. What are you having the most conversations around?
I mean, definitely social media and girls when they get to that age. And I think even, we were talking a little bit about the pandemic earlier, just as a side. And I feel like girls are struggling relationally more today than I've seen them in 30 years.
Wow.
And I think social media coming out of the pandemic has, before we would have been concerned that it was taking the place of real relationships. I would say it is significantly more now. And they believe it more than they ever have.
That's surprising because I think adults believe it less than we ever have.
Yes.
Since social media has existed.
Yes.
I feel like I'm hearing my peers go like, I got a flip phone. I'm out. I deleted my socials. If y'all need me, text me. I feel like our generation is kind of saying less, please. But you're saying that teenage girls are still saying more.
Well, maybe
More,
it's the
please.
boundaries. Like, I feel like we are old enough because we know what life was like without it.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that generation doesn't know what it's like without it. Like I can look back onto my childhood and know how simple life was without all of that.
Right.
And want that back.
Right.
And my greatest fear with my kids is that they'll never know life without it. So how will they know how much better it can be?
Great point.
You know? Like, how do we teach them? How do we show them that? Is that something that, like, us putting limitations on ourselves? Like, I'm going to put my phone down for the next 2 hours. We're going to go outside and play, and I'm not going to touch my phone. It's just going to be us, nature, you and mommy, back and forth, and finding those boundaries to teach them healthy habits and to connect them with nature. Because when I think back without technology, that's what I love the most is I remember being outside. I remember being like my dad showing me the stars and telling me about, like that's what I think of without technology. And of course we had the movie nights and all the fun things that come along with technology, but it wasn't weaved in every aspect of our day. And that's what I want to make sure my kids know is that there is a difference between disconnecting from the technology world and just being in nature. And then there's a time for technology too that's fun and can be useful.
David, help us, give us, as we're finishing up here, give us some boundaries around. So maybe some parents are thinking for the first time, I'm thinking for the first time as a non-parent, I've never thought that the kids see the back of the phone when they see my face. I've never thought that until we were sitting here. So are there some basic, like, okay, if you're going to change your relationship with technology in front of your kids, here's a couple of things you can do to start. We aren't going to throw our phones out the window. So what's the start of having healthier boundaries?
I would say a starting point. I love when you were talking and spoke to modeling. I think it does have to start with us remembering that kids learn more from observation than information. So if we're talking all the time about setting limits, but we're not doing it ourselves, like there's something conflicting happening there. And I think a second rule of thumb, Annie, is you asked that. I talk a lot about how I don't want boys of any age to spend more time in virtual reality than in real activity. So, like, I don't want you spending more time playing FIFA soccer than the real game of soccer.
Yeah.
I don't want you to communicate primarily through texting or Snapchat than having real conversations where you're having to read the nonverbal, which boys are weaker in. That's harder for them. And research would tell us 70 to 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So if I don't have that opportunity to watch your face and your body and figure out all of what you're saying, I've lost a lot of what I need for communication.
Wow.
That's a great balance. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sissy? Anything else?
I got distracted by FIFA soccer.
I know. You're like, oh, I do love FIFA soccer.
Well, I mean, I was thinking for I feel like in this age we're living in and thinking about how relationally wired girls are, that I think, to your point, that we're spending more time with friends in real life than we are interacting with them on phones. And that girls are seeing their moms have rich relationships that are really important to them, that you're going to dinner together and even going on trips together, so that this false sense of intimacy that a phone and social media can bring doesn't become what she thinks real intimacy looks like among friends.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank y'all for doing this today. I'm so glad. I mean, I think one of the things we get to do, Lauren, is just kind of bridge our friends listening to the experts, because I am not. You're more of an expert than I am.
Absolutely.
But David and Sissy, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for
We
having us.
love being
y'all.
with you too.
Yes, we
It was
have.
so fun. This
Thanks
was so
for
good.
having us.
Y'all, wasn't that so helpful? My gracious. David Thomas and Sissy Goff from Daystar. So make sure you listen to their podcast, Raising Boys and Girls. It is so, so good. And share this episode with your friends. There are so many parents who are trying to sort out how to do this well, like we all are. And so sharing this one with your people will really help them have this conversation as a starting point for some of the things they're trying to sort out.
And I really hope y'all are going to join us for the next episode of the Live and Love podcast. It is going to be so good. We have author, speaker, and podcaster Carrie Kompakis to talk about what it looks like to live in love with mom guilt and comparison.